Hey everyone, welcome to Vic's Yard to Table. Today I'm going to show you how I make my homemade Portuguese linguiça.
Smoked low and slow, then finished hot and fast. Let's go.
So this recipe starts off with a 4-pound pork shoulder or pork butt. I'm going to cut this all by hand, so I kept this in the freezer for about 3 or 4 hours to get it to a semi-frozen state. You don't want it frozen solid, but it's easier to work with if it's semi-frozen. I like to cut my linguiça down to about 1/8 to 1/4 inch. It gives you that nice chunky texture instead of a fine grind. Traditionally, this is how it's done. Just a knife and a cutting board, no grinder. That keeps that rustic feel. But in a future episode, maybe I'll run it through the grinder and we can compare. So let me know in the comments if you want to see it that way. But honestly, the best linguiça I've had in my life had this exact texture. That's why I cut it this way. So I'm going to show you my version of a Portuguese red pepper sauce. I start off with 8 cloves of garlic and I peel them. Then place the garlic in a piece of aluminum foil and drizzle a little bit of olive oil on top. So this is the olive oil we always had in our house growing up. So anytime I cook something Portuguese, this is the one I use. You can use any olive oil that you have on hand though. I then wrap up the garlic in the aluminum foil before I place it in the oven. I then take the red pepper and then I cut off the stem. After that, I cut it in half and then I remove any of the seeds. Then I drizzle a little bit of the olive oil on top and then I add a little bit of kosher salt. Then I flip them over and then I do the same to the other side. Add a little bit of olive oil and then I add a little bit of kosher salt again. I'm growing cayenne peppers in my hydroponic system. I have them in a Dutch bucket system. So I'm going to go out in my yard and I'm grabbing 3 cayenne peppers and I'm going to add them to this recipe. So I remove the stems from the cayenne pepper. I put the peppers and the garlic in the oven for about 30 minutes at 350 degrees, and I do the cayenne peppers for just 5 minutes. Then I put the red pepper, the cayenne pepper, and the garlic in a food processor. Then I add just a pinch of cumin, a pinch of coriander, as well as a pinch of allspice. I pulse it several times in the mini food processor and then add about a tablespoon of olive oil. And then I pulse it several more times to get it well incorporated.
It smells really good.
And this is the paste-like consistency that I'm looking for. Then I add my red pepper paste to the diced pork butt. Then I add in 1.5 tablespoons of kosher salt, 1.5 tablespoons of smoked paprika, or you can use regular paprika. Then 2 teaspoons of black pepper. Then I peel and finally chop 6 cloves of garlic. Then I add in 1/4 cup of red wine. Make sure to use curing salt here because it helps protect the meat from harmful bacteria, especially since we're going to be smoking it at 150 degrees Fahrenheit for a few hours. Anything under 150 degrees Fahrenheit is right in the danger zone. I'm using 3/4 teaspoon for these 4 pounds of diced pork shoulder. I'm adding instant non-fat dry milk. I'm adding 2 teaspoons per pound, so I'm adding 8 teaspoons total. It acts as a binder and helps the sausage hold on to moisture so it stays juicy and doesn't fall apart. Then I mix everything by hand, making sure it's well incorporated. I try not to overwork the meat as well. Then I add 3 bay leaves and I mix it up just a little bit more. I'm being careful not to break up the bay leaves because after it marinates, I want to be able to fish them out. Then I cover it with saran wrap and I let it marinate in the refrigerator. I usually leave it in there anywhere between 1 and 3 days. For this batch, I'm going to do 3 days. After it's done marinating in the fridge, it's always good practice to take a little sample piece and cook it up and see if you need to add any ingredients or any salt. The first time I tried doing this without having a sample first, I came out with the biggest pile of sausage surprise of my life. I like to use natural hog casings for this. The size that I got is 32 to 38 millimeters, or 1 1/4 to 1.5 inch. You could also consider collagen casing if you don't want to use hog casing. So I soak the hog casings in lukewarm water for about 30 to 60 minutes to rehydrate them and to remove some of the salt. It also makes them more flexible and easier to stuff and prevents blowouts. But I would say it's better to throw in an extra one if you're starting out and have more than enough than not enough, especially if you have a couple of blowouts and you need an extra casing. I stuff my linguiça all by hand. This piece right here is called the stuffing horn. It's what guides the meat into the casing evenly and helps you control the fill. So you need to clean out the insides of the hog casings as well. You want to get a lot of that salt out of there. So what I like to do is open up one end and then I start dunking it in the water until I get a good amount of water in there. Then I just allow it to run through the whole hog casing. Again, I open up one of the ends, get a finger or a thumb inside, and then I put it on the end of the horn. And then I work towards sliding the whole hog casing onto the horn. After that, I just tie off the end. I'm stuffing this the old school way, straight through the horn by hand or the handle of a wooden spoon. You don't need a stuffer to start doing this yourself. You don't want to overpack it, just enough so the casing is full, but still flexible. Make sure you fill the casing by pushing the meat down while trying to avoid air pockets. Also careful not to overfill so you don't get a blowout. A smooth, even fill makes all the difference. I go for about 12 inches for each link. You can do any size link you want, but try to keep each link approximately the same size. It helps them cook evenly later. Once I reach the end, I twist it here, and that locks the link in place. Then the process just basically repeats itself. Just keep stuffing the sausage, twisting off the ends. By the end, you should have about 6 separate links. Just discard the bay leaves when you come across them. It only takes a few minutes per link, so it won't take you that long. Another thing that won't take too long is if you give me a thumbs up and subscribe. It really helps the channel. I usually use a small pin or a needle, but I'm using a toothpick here to gently prick the casings, just enough to let the air escape. After pricking both sides, I lay the linguiça on a wire rack and place it in the refrigerator overnight. This lets the casings dry and firms up the sausage. This also helps the flavors develop before cooking. Overnight refrigeration is a simple step that improves flavor, texture, and safety, all without any extra effort, just a little advanced planning. I'm using my Yoder YS640 pellet smoker. I'm going to set it to 150 degrees Fahrenheit and hit the linguiça with some smoke for about 3 or 4 hours. For this cook, I'm using oak pellets. So I'm going to smoke them at 150 degrees for about 3 hours. That'll give it enough time to absorb a lot of smoke. After that, I'm going to turn up the temperature to 275 degrees Fahrenheit until the linguiça gets to an internal temperature of between 150 to 155 degrees. A little bit past 150. Okay, so we're temping at 150, and we're going to put it in an ice bath. The ice bath immediately cools the sausage, and that prevents it from continuing to cook from residual heat. And this will help avoid overcooking. also helps set the casing. The rapid cooling firms up the casing slightly, helping it hold its shape. After about 30 seconds or so, I take it out of the ice bath and then I pat it dry. So this is a traditional Portuguese clay terracotta linguiça roaster, and this is the way I like to cook my linguiça. I hope you got some real value out of this one. If you learned something new, hit that thumbs up and subscribe. I post outdoor cooking and gardening videos every week. Thanks for watching. I'll see you on the next one.